and welcome to another edition of Coastal Conversations with Carla. Today I'm here with Doug Walker from Galt Insurance. He's here to specifically talk to us about homeowners insurance. But for a moment, I want you to focus on the picture in the background. These are sailboats sailing on the Sea of Malta. They are perfectly at peace, in full sail, having a great and glorious and beautiful day. That's what we want you to do in your new home. So homeowners insurance, as you will see from today's discussion, is a key part of that. There's also another part of the process, the home inspection, that leads to some discounts that you can get on your homeowners insurance, and we're going to discuss that as well, because that's another peace of mind part of the puzzle, your home inspection. And the two of those go together to make a package for you that will really allow you to have this kind of day in your new home. First, let's meet Doug Walker. Hi, Doug.
Hi there. Nice to see you.
So Doug and I met when we were forming another networking group in the community, and we hit it off, and we've done some work together since then. And so I've invited Doug to talk to us about his company in particular, Galt Insurance. Tell us about Galt.
Yeah, so Galt Insurance, we're an independent insurance broker, and we're based out of South Florida. So we've got well over 50 companies that we're able to write all throughout the state of Florida. And yeah, so we've got a lot of options, especially when it comes to coastal homes, homes right up on the beach, Airbnbs, which are very tough to find insurance for. Also, risks or homes that have challenging characteristics. For example, let's say some houses have cloth wiring. Right, it's very high. It's very hard to find insurance for homes that have cloth wiring or Federal Pacific boxes.
Oh yeah.
Right, or if you've even got, there's also options if there are galvanized plumbing. All right, these are some of the characteristics that it's hard to find insurance for. We've got those carriers that we're able to provide for you at good rates, so you don't have to get a whole new house replumb for galvanized plumbing, or you don't have to have the cloth wires switched out. If the house has been there 60 years and it's fine, the insurance isn't going to ask you to switch out that cloth wire. They're good as is, and it's for a very competitive rate as well. So we have all those options.
That's a cost savings.
Yes.
Wow, if you don't have to switch out your plumbing, that's a 2 thumbs up on that one. Or your wiring or whatever.
Yeah, it's like $6,000 plus, right, or more to do that. I mean, come on, after you buy the house, or sometimes it's worked in before the house is purchased, it's a lot of extra work that some companies require. However, we've got carriers that do not. And it makes a much easier transition into the
I remember
home.
we did one sail beachside here in New Smyrna Beach with an odd roof. Remember that?
Yes,
it was an octagonal roof, and it didn't meet the building codes that we currently have, and so you were able to write that policy for a great rate.
Yes. Very competitive, and it worked out super good. And it was very, it worked out smooth for him without a lot of,
no hassle.
Yes.
Yeah,
right.
That's great.
No hassle,
right. So tell us, what is homeowners insurance in a nutshell?
All right, so the homeowners insurance, it's designed to cover the structure of the house, okay? So it covers you for fire, theft, vandalism, any type of wind-related peril is covered. That's the standard homeowners policy. Now in Florida, we have what's called an HO3 policy, which is a specialty HO3 policy. So that encompasses everything. The fire, theft, vandalism, also it covers contents coverage. So everything that you own inside the home is covered. For example, furniture, clothes, electronics. And then there's also, and then you go in deep with some of the carriers. So some of them only cover specialty items up to $1,000. For example, if it's jewelry, or if it's antiques, or furs, or what have you. Specialty items, they cover it up to $1,000, and then you have an option to go up to $5,000.
Right.
Blanket coverage for those items without an appraisal. Some folks have jewelry with 25,000 plus, and jewelry
and
coverage.
They just pay an extra premium or something for added coverage.
Right, if they want, and then they need an appraisal, and then it's usually $20 per thousand. Those are broad terms,
right? Sure.
Broad numbers. However, that's a ballpark of what they're looking at. So you can dig in and even get your contents covered, as well.
Awesome. So tell us about what happens when there's a hurricane. Is there special hurricane coverage, or is that covered in the HO3 policy?
Well, generally, it depends on what you're looking for. So if you've got a house with a mortgage, mortgage companies require hurricane coverage. So the policies that we have cover the homeowners and then also the wind coverage as well. They call it hazard and wind.
All right.
And it's combined into one policy.
But what about rising water? Because I know here in Florida that's an issue. And on every property we've carried flood insurance even though we weren't in a flood zone because we were afraid of rising water. Talk about that for a minute.
Right. So flood insurance, that's rising water from outside of the home coming in.
Right.
Okay. And so that's a specialty coverage. It's separate from the homeowners insurance. Most homeowners insurance carriers. Some do offer flood as well. However, the bulk of the carriers, flood is separate. Okay. And the flood insurance, you've got there's two markets. There's the private flood market, and then there's the FEMA or the NFIP market. And they're different. Okay. And one's a little more comprehensive. The private flood market's a little more comprehensive, and the FEMA flood market they're super broad.
Right.
Okay. And they're able to provide. I mean, it's because it's government backed. It's in the event of a rising tidal surge, and let's say all of South Florida is covered in water, it's going to be very hard for these private companies to pay out on those claims, right? Yeah. So with the private flood, they're able to handle it in specialized levels, and who knows? I mean, they may be able to provide coverage and not go under in the event of a tidal surge, depending on how broad it is. But we know that the U.S. government-backed coverage is going to be able to cover. Yeah, it's going to stand. Right. Exactly. And the private, who knows what's going to happen.
Another time when we have more time to talk, we'll talk specifically about flood zones and what that means and all that kind of stuff. But we've always just had a basic flood policy just added on, and it's only been like $400 or $500 a year. It's not. It hasn't been super expensive, but we haven't been in a flood zone per se. We just worry about, in the event of some weird event, maybe because we're worrywarts and we want to live like this over here. So talk to us about how the home inspection is related to homeowners insurance. Like, what happens there?
Yeah, so the home inspection, now the bulk of companies require a 4-point inspection if the house is over 30 years. Some companies require it after 20 years. Some of them, it's not until after 40 years. Okay, and the reason being is...
I did not know that.
Yes, and it depends on the carrier. And the reason being is because a lot of the home characteristics from those houses built 40, 50 years ago are not covered by these new carriers. So they're not set up, a lot of them aren't set up to handle the cloth wires. They're just, they're not equipped to handle that type of risk. They don't factor it into all the rating scales.
Sure.
Okay, and so what the inspection does is it identifies what those characteristics are. It'll let you know if you've got cloth wiring or galvanized plumbing or Federal Pacific box. And if you do, then you can adjust and make sure you got the right insurance company that's going to be able to provide that. Because otherwise, you get a carrier, if you don't match those up properly, and when it goes into underwriting generally does their own homeowners inspection. They'll find the cloth wiring,
and they'll
find that Federal Pacific box, and they'll say, yeah, you should, listen, we never should have written it. You're going to have to switch that out or the policy will cancel. Right? Okay. And that's, so you
want to make sure you do that up front, like everything up front, right?
Right, because otherwise you're looking, you bought the house, you moved in, you've forgotten about it, now all of a sudden, you forgot about the insurance, you moved on, now all of a sudden insurance is reaching back out to you and saying, by the way, you got to get a whole new electric box, which is another $1,100 ballpark, right? Or a new water heater. You keep going. So those home inspections are key, especially if the house is over 30 years. So you'll know you're not going into that policy blind.
Right. Now talk about that. Another thing that all of the insurance carriers that we've worked with have required a wind mitigation if the house is over a certain number of years. So talk about what a wind mitigation is.
Yeah, so wind mitigation inspection is key, especially if the house was built 2001 or older, sometimes even 2002. okay? And what it is it identifies how the roof is connected to the walls of the house, right? So the truss, the roof to wall connection, how's the truss connected to the walls of the house? Is it strapped in? Is there hurricane clips? And you get a discount for that. And it's sizable discounts.
Yeah.
Depending on where the house is located, it's going to be even more of a discount. Sometimes it could go up $1,000 plus in discounts for having that wind mitigation inspection. $1,000 plus in discounts per year. Some companies, it's only based on where the house is, it might only be $400 or $500. Still, that's savings though per year.
Yeah.
So if the house it was built, really, it's 2002 or older, getting that wind mitigation inspection is key to help keeping your rates competitive.
One of the things that I've found that people have done is they found out, during the home inspection process, the roof is too old and it doesn't have all of these things, and our cost is going to be so high. So what they've done is they've gotten their coverage, they've bought the house, and immediately put a new roof on, and then had it re-inspected, and then they can go back and readjust their insurance.
Right. Yes, and that'll help. Now, another thing that the wind mitigation does is these inspectors go out and pull permits on the roof, and they identify when the roof was reshingled. And now some carriers will go, wait a minute, that's over 15 years, we've got to have a new roof, and the roof's fine. It's architectural shingle roof, it's probably got another 5+ years. Okay. However, that carrier is flagging them and saying, listen, we need a new roof. However, other carriers are fine with the roof being 15+ years. Some carriers that we have at John Galt Insurance, right, you can have a roof that's over 20 years, okay? And as long as it's in good shape and it's not leaking and there's no structural damage to it, it's fine. So it all depends on the carrier.
Yeah, I think it's an important note that you're an independent agency and you have the ability to select from a variety of carriers. So if somebody comes back and says, I didn't plan on that $4,000 bill, Doug, what can you do for me?
Right.
You can reshop it and see if maybe there's somebody that's a better fit.
Right.
Or more in their budget or whatever.
Right.
Now, how does somebody, I hear a lot about deductibles. How do I find, what is a deductible and why, how do I know how much my deductible should be?
Yeah, so when you get into the homeowner section, with Florida, there's 2 separate deductibles, okay, on the standard homeowners policy. You've got, it's the all other perils deductible, which is generally, it's usually $500, $1,000, or $2,500. Then you have the hurricane deductible, which is generally 2% or 5%. And what that means is that's 2% of the dwelling coverage. Okay, so 2%. So let's say that the house is $300,000 in dwelling coverage. That's 2% of $300,000. So it's a $6,000 hurricane deductible.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Yes, and how it works for you is it's 24 hours before the hurricane hits, during that hurricane, and 24 hours after it leaves. So any damage you have in that window of time falls under the hurricane deductible.
Okay, so wind damage, trees blowing down, whatever, even if you're not in the eye of the hurricane, but you're before or after, that all counts.
It all counts. And then, and then generally, depending on the carrier, and then they take that, they use that deductible, and then from there they go and write the check for you.
So so then you kind of look and you say, all right, how much money do I have in savings? How much can I afford to pay out if I have an event? And that's how you select how much your deductible should be? Right.
And then we also, one of the advantages we have is being an independent agency, John Galt Insurance. Right?
I like it.
Share that with you. I share that with you. You also have $1,000 hurricane deductible options, okay? Which is a big deal, especially if you got a $400,000 or $500,000 house. To be able to have that ability to go with a $1,000 hurricane deductible, because instead of having a $10,000 hurricane deductible marker, you've got $1,000. Yes,
that's a big deal.
It helps out a lot. And then there's other carriers that we have that are $500 hurricane deductible options, and then a 1% hurricane deductible option as well. There are some companies that do that. Generally, though, you're going to see it between 2% or 5%.
And I assume that the annual cost of the insurance goes up depending on how much you lower your deductible.
Yes. Right? Yeah. Absolutely. And they base it on the age of the home. as well. They factor in a lot because many of the homes, there are higher loss ratios in some of these older homes. So if you've got a newer house, generally 2010 or newer, or even 2002 and newer, what they do for you is they factor in these lower deductibles, and it provides you that ability to keep your rates down.
So we've thrown a lot of information at the audience today, right? And on your screen, you're going to see how to contact Doug if you have homeowners insurance questions or any other insurance questions that have to do with product insurance. He's happy to talk to you about that. But do you have a favorite insurance story?
Let's see, a favorite insurance story. Let's see. Well, yeah, when you're dealing with, for example, like the house that you had beachside, right, with the unique roof, and a lot of carriers weren't able to take it, and so that was a super nice custom house. By the way, it was very nice, and it was in great condition. However, there was a challenge with the roof, so and he wanted to finance, and he needed a mortgage, so we were able to find your buyer with the right insurance at the right competitive rate, so he was able to get that house. So that was the difference of him being able to either buy that house with you or to move on to a different house. So stories like that.
And he loves that house, by the way. He's so happy. So so that was awesome. Any favorite claim stories? Anybody that you know that had a claim that was like crazy wild?
Well, that does happen. Like these water heaters, that's the challenge. The water in Florida does not rate very high on the U.S. scale. We're right towards the bottom in water quality, and they base it on we're sitting right on an aquifer with sand. So there's nothing there's not much of a barrier from the runoff that goes down into the aquifer. So when that water is coming through to all of our pipes, there's a lot of solids that are mixed in. And then a lot of the chemicals that they have with it as well. So these water heaters, because the water here in Florida tends to be so bad, these water heaters tend to blow out on the back end. Generally within that's the marker that the industry uses, about a 15-year marker. And there's no warning on these water heaters. There's generally no warning. So all of a sudden you come in one day, and the back end of the water heater blows out, and all that water gushes out, and it goes through the drywall, and it ends up being a pretty sizable water damage claim inside the house, even if it's in the garage. So that's a challenge as well. So it's good you want to make sure that you have the water damage coverage on there as well.
Good. Yeah, good advice. Yeah.
Which some carriers exclude. So you want to make sure that you've got that listed as well, because in the event of some type of water damage claim, that's going to be covered. Yeah, so it's sad that you see that. Now the industry's trying to tighten that up, and they generally use about a 15-year marker, sometimes 20 years, based on a carrier. However, it's a good thing to keep up with your water heaters. Yeah,
and it's good to have a knowledgeable agent that can advise you about things like that, because who would think of that as something separate that you need? You think you've got homeowners insurance, and then it comes to the day of your hot water heater blowing out, and you find out, oh no, you weren't covered for that. That's not a good thing.
Right. Wow. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming by today, and we're going to give you contact information for Doug on the screen. And as always, you can comment, and we'll be happy to answer you and get in touch and answer any questions that you may have. And of course, as always, if you like this video, please remember to like and share. And we'd love you to subscribe as well. Also, if you've got any topics that you'd like to hear about in the future, please put that in the comment box below. Thanks so much.